It's starting to dawn on a lot of people now after watching episode 5 of Ahsoka how much this episode changed the point view of the entire Star Wars saga. It was fun for a while, guys. Now it just became real because in this live action episode you clearly get to see the gut punch that is actually the Clone Wars, the suffering, the tragedy, the dark reality that was Padawans being soldiers in battle. Ever since we were kids, most of us have seen Star Wars dozens of times, and of course the animated shows too, and you never get to fully realize what that actually means, what it means to go through war. Dave Filoni, though, single-handedly with this episode gave a dose of reality to most of us, and to understand what this episode actually means for the future of Star Wars and how we need to take a second viewing of the entirety of the Clone Wars and the desperate decisions that the Jedi Order took are really, really important. To understand what just happened and to go through what Ahsoka just went through, we need to talk about the Jedi Order first. Let's take a closer look, and by that I mean an out-of-the-box view of what happened with the Jedi Order, because what I'm about to reveal to you guys is actually kind of bonkers, and I went through the entire timeline to actually get a comprehensive view. So here's the thing, the Sith were gone for a millennia before the prequels hit. The days when the Old Republic battled the Sith Empire vanished a long time ago. The KOTOR days that we played, those were gone for a long time, meaning new crops of Jedi grew privileged and became peacekeepers, not having to deal with Sith Lords or galactic war for that matter. Well, having no mortal foe for such a long time means if a worthy opponent was to present him or herself, then you will be ill-prepared and take ill-advised steps towards defending yourself, and this is precisely what happened to the Republic as well as the Jedi Order. I will make this abundantly clear throughout this video. So let's set aside the fact that at the time when the prequels start, Yoda is the most senior Jedi, and he hadn't even faced a Sith in his 900-year life that we know of. Think about that for a second. Let that thought creep in for a second. Yoda, the most powerful Jedi in the Order, had never even battled a Sith. What does this mean? Well, this means that the other Jedi didn't even have the slightest clue how to even start preparing for a Sith or a full-scale galactic-wide separatist attack, essentially what we understand as our World War. This is what happened in Attack of the Clones and then in Revenge of the Sith, a version of our two world wars. The entire galaxy was at war, and it left the Jedi limp, unprepared, and unmatched. If we go back to the Phantom Menace, this is confirmed when Qui-Gon, through sheer knowledge and Force acuity, deduces that he just fought a Sith and Maul on Tatooine, something that nobody has fought for a millennia. Ki-Adi-Mundi even says this, bringing out seeds of doubt from the Council. In a sense, Qui-Gon barely escaped alive, and still the Jedi Council hesitated to believe him. Knowing all this, you can now start to understand why the Clone Wars happened the way they did, and why ultimately a Jedi Order not well versed in wartime would throw everything at the Separatist armies, including child soldiers. The trauma of what these Padawans went through can be visibly seen now in live action. Episode 5 clearly showed that, while the animated show doesn't paint a good picture of it either, don't get me wrong. Seeing an actual kid in Ariana Greenblatt go into war with a young 19-year-old de-aged Hayden Christensen really summed it all up. Ariana Greenblatt is the actress that just played a 14-year-old Ahsoka Tano. While she is 16 herself, on screen she was, I think, intentionally instructed by Dave Filoni to exude as much of a young persona as possible. This is clear when, in the midst of battle, she tells Anakin that she wants to stop fighting. Anakin tells her that if she does, she will die. Then she sees all the scarred and injured clones afterwards. There's a moment there where she even blames herself.
It was my fault. They were following my orders. I got them killed.
Ahsoka is 14 years old at this moment. How do you expect her to internalize this? Now think of the trauma these child soldiers went through. It's clear that Ahsoka has carried this pain throughout all of her adult life, and she even manifests this when battling Dark Anakin. There is a moment there where Ahsoka relents and yellow Sith eyes briefly appear before she stops herself mid-track. You see, she realized after all the horrific battles, deaths, and tragedies that in the end, this is what Sidious wanted. After the Clone Wars, she had time to reflect on what Palpatine did to the sanctity of not only the Galactic Republic, but the holiest of holies for Ahsoka, and that is the Jedi Order. Things were so bad that she abandoned her life completely because a young child, now adolescent, realized what an entire Jedi Order could not. They are no longer peacekeepers. The fake ideals she was taught as a kid were now completely gone. Jedi became soldiers, striking first on the offensive, thinking of planets as assets. And outside of Ahsoka, we have more disillusioned Jedi that abandoned the Jedi Order too, albeit in a more explosive way. Barriss Offee, of course, comes to mind. When she is first introduced, she is of similar age to Ahsoka, a young kid Padawan that was thrust into battle without being questioned and without proper training. Just think of this for a second. We don't only have a 14-year-old Ahsoka given to Anakin as a Padawan and she is thrust into battle. We have a Barriss Offee, a kid too, who is a Padawan that is thrust into the Clone Wars without hesitation. Now, we've seen these two, but we've seen many more Padawans throughout the Clone Wars animated show. This means that many more young Padawans were introduced to war at a very early age. They had to see things that they could never unsee. Few would live on to survive their trauma, but those who did, similar to Ahsoka, were probably traumatized for life and they could never get over it. After all is said and done, after watching what we saw in Ahsoka Episode 5, can you really blame Barriss Offee for turning to the dark side? Ahsoka walked away, but Barriss was angry that her innocent childhood was taken away, angry that her training didn't consist of a normal, regular Padawan life on her way to knighthood, but that of a soldier who can barely hold a lightsaber. Essentially, these kids were taken as babies to the Order. They were found by the Jedi throughout the galaxy. I mean, Plo Koon found Ahsoka, for example, and she, together with the rest, were brought up to think the glorious Jedi Order that I am a part of will shine forevermore. And then Order 66 happens. The trauma is now compounded. Not only was your childhood destroyed by the Clone Wars and by the Jedi themselves who needed as much Jedi as possible, but now your life was literally taken away or in danger because of scheming Sith who overtook the government and branded the Jedi as traitors instead. Meaning that these kids that the Jedi let loose on battlefields died for nothing, sacrificed their lives not for the greater good, but for their own demise. And again, Ahsoka carries this deep inside her entire life. They say life flashes before you as you die. Ahsoka was supposed to die again, but with the help of Anakin, she again was saved. However, her life did flash before her. Weirdly though, it was only the parts that mattered to her the most. Her adolescent teenage years, once in Ryloth and another time on the Siege of Mandalore. This is really important. Dave Filoni put these scenes in particular to showcase that Ahsoka has been thinking about these moments her entire life, and both moments are of a very young Ahsoka thrust into battle. If she doesn't, she will die. It's a very hard life for anyone, but especially a former Jedi. This video was intense to make, and I'm really wondering, what do you guys think? Do you blame the Jedi Order for this, or was it just necessary? Let's talk down below in the comments.